I'm Ashley Hasfal, creator of Initium series, and you're listening to the True North Country Comics podcast.
Welcome to the True North Country Comics podcast, dedicated to promote Canadian comic book and graphic novel creators and supporters. I'm John Swinimer. On this episode, I chat with Ashley Hasfal about her new comic book series Initium and her graphic novel Masterclass. This podcast is available on Apple Podcasts and Google Podcasts and YouTube. Please like and subscribe to that video channel. And if you want to help the site and the podcast, please consider supporting the effort by chipping in at ko-fi.com/True North Country Comics. Your patronage is greatly appreciated. Ashley Hasfal is a 2D designer and screenwriter whose work as a background artist can be found on popular television shows such as the Emmy Award-winning Rick and Morty, Magic School Bus Rides Again, and Esme and Roy. She's written multiple episodes for popular kids shows like Xavier Riddle and the Secret Museum for PBS. Pages of her self-published comic Initium were displayed at the Jeppe Entertainment Museum exhibit Milestones African Americans in Comics, Pop Culture and Beyond in 2013. Ashley's work in graphic novels seek to center Caribbean diasporic identity and mythology mixed with lighthearted comedy. The story of Initium goes like this. Upon discovering the true plot behind the medical trial they joined, 4 parents gave their lives to save their young children and escape the organizations bent on their control. Now, the children are teens and struggling to figure out what they're capable of, who they're becoming, and what's been done to them. Follow these 5 teens as they fight to free themselves and to find their futures in this new and dangerous world. So, without further ado, here's my chat with Ashley Hasfal about her comic book series Initium and her graphic novel Masterclass. So, Ashley Hasfal, thank you very much for taking time to chat with me.
Oh, thank you for inviting me.
I appreciate your time. Before we get started with all the questions, I want to ask you, what was the first comic book that you read?
I think the first comic book I ever read was an Archie comic, actually, because they're easily accessible at the grocery store. So I remember seeing those and my mom didn't want to take me grocery shopping because every time I would ask to buy one. So that was definitely my first.
It's very popular, that's for sure. So very good stuff for reading as a youngster, but I'm wondering who or what inspires you to create today?
I think I kind of made the natural progression from Archie comics to DC comics. I got really into Batman and Catwoman. And then from there, I remember in college coming across this graphic novel called Sky Doll. And it's a French graphic novel. And the artwork was just beautiful and amazing. And there was so much detail and so much color. And it blew my mind. And I was like, oh, I need to create something like that. And that's kind of what drove me to keep creating comics.
Oh, very good. Very good. Now, I was looking at your bio and it says your expertise is in background design. So for those not familiar with it, can you talk a wee bit about what that role is and maybe how you have applied that education to your professional career?
Sure. Yeah. So a background designer is in TV animation. A background designer creates all the backgrounds that the characters act on. So you can start from the creation phase, which is location designing. And so you're designing all of the locations. And then from there, you have layout artists who then kind of go in with the camera and take shots based on the background you designed.
That's pretty cool. That's pretty cool. And for those who don't know, you've worked on a variety of shows that people have seen already. We want to mention a few of those?
Sure, yeah. I worked on Magic School Bus Rides Again. I worked on the 2nd season of Rick and Morty. I've worked on Pickwick and Esme and Roy, which is another one.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Really neat, really neat. We went up earlier this year at the Rose Theatre. The Brampton Arts Organization was holding an event, and you had mentioned that you had worked on your graphic novel Initium. I wonder if you could talk a wee bit about that project and what inspired you to create it.
Sure. So Initium is a graphic novel about 5 teenagers. They have superpowers. And once they turn, I believe it's 17, they come into their superpowers and they're basically figuring out who they are while also figuring out what happened to them, what happened to their parents, and also fighting for their right to live while these corporations and the government are trying to control them.
Ah, okay. Okay. So a lot of teenage angst in there, I bet.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Pretty cool. Now, speaking about graphic novels, I understand you have a master class for the Brampton Arts Organization regarding graphic novel creation. Wonder if you could talk a wee bit about that master class and maybe your goal for attendees.
Sure. So for the masterclass, I'm largely focusing on artists who want to create graphic novels or comics, but I will also have a part at the end where authors who are looking to hire artists, what they can expect and what they should provide their artists with in the process. So the artist kind of knows what's expected of them. So the general vibe of the masterclass is just to kind of start from ideation all the way to creating your graphic novel. So once you have your idea, where do you go from there? Like fleshing out your idea and kind of running it by other people for a fresh take, and then writing your script, and then editing your script and locking your script, and then creating your designs, and then moving from that design stage to actually paneling things and like what panels look best for the kind of shot that you're trying to create, and sort of the differences between some comics, because some comics use a lot of shorthand that doesn't give you a play by play of the details, and some comics kind of operate like storyboards from film. So just the kinds of styles that you can achieve through a comic.
It's a little bit more complicated than just I want to make a book, right? There's more to
Yes.
it that people don't realize, I suppose, when they first come up to you and say, "Hey, I want to make one too."
Yes, exactly. Yeah. There's a
Yeah.
lot to think about.
For sure, for sure. Now, I know that in your master class you were giving out a lot of advice, and it's a well thought out session. But I'm wondering, could you provide just one piece of advice for those who want to start the comic book or a graphic novel?
I think the best piece of advice, or not the best, but one piece I could provide is be prepared to kill your darlings. And I say that because when I first started getting into comics, I really just kind of wanted to do this one thing, and I pushed right into it. And so the story wasn't quite right. And there were things that I was holding on to because I liked them that weren't necessarily serving the overall story. And I know that as artists, we can get really attached to certain things. And sometimes you just need space between yourself and what you're creating. So then you're more ruthless almost when you come back to it and you're like, okay, I like this idea. I can probably shelve it for something else, but it doesn't work here.
How do you find that out though? Like if you're so close to it and you're working on it and you're very determined about it, do you ask someone else to review it, or how do you do that sort of thing?
Yes, I definitely ask other people. I've asked like my family, so usually someone you trust, because you're giving them your baby, right? So it can be a little bit hard, but someone that you trust that will give you good advice. So I've shared my scripts with my script mentor, and she's always been able to kind of see my vision, but be like, okay, this isn't quite working, or you can refine this, or smooth this out. And so that can help. And also sometimes I just have to walk away from it. Like sometimes I'm like, this isn't working and I'm not sure why yet. And I'll walk away for a day, maybe a week, even if I have that kind of time. And when I come back, I'm coming back with fresh eyes. So I can say, okay, I really did like this idea, but I can be more honest with myself now that it's not as successful as I hoped.
Right, right. Well, let's switch gears a wee bit and talk about the tools used to create your art. I wonder if you could walk me through your workflow.
Sure. So I mostly work digitally with Photoshop. I've been toying around with playing with Clip Studio Paint because I know that that started out as more of a comic software that really helped people move through their workflow quickly in a way that Photoshop didn't. And hand drawn. So sometimes I have ideas that, for whatever reason, just are not working on my tablet. And so I will definitely go back to hand drawn and rough some things out. And that gives me more clarity to go back to digital.
Ah, okay. And from there, you refine the image through software or through additional type of work?
Yeah, so usually I will create like a rough page. So once I have my script in my mind, I kind of already have an idea of the kind of panels I want to use for each part. And then I'll rough that whole page out. And it's usually really loose just to get my ideas out. And then I'll go back and then I'll refine it. And then once I'm sure that this is working, then I'll start cleaning it up and then adding color and sort of finalizing the text and the bubbles and all that kind of stuff after.
Now, we've been talking about Initium, and I'm wondering, do you have any other up-and-coming projects that you can talk about?
I do. I am currently working on a unnamed project. I haven't found a name for it yet, but basically it's about two young people who fall in love at a party. And it's going to be a short comic. It's about a girl mostly. Her name is Zora, and she's gotten out of a really bad relationship and she's kind of hopeless. And her friends take her to this party and she meets this guy and they hit it off right away, and just kind of encapsulating that moment of being young and in love. And that's what I have coming up next.
This is completely out of left field, but I've been asking creators about the use of AI in comic book creation. I know that's the buzzword and everything in the news these days, but I want to get your take. Do you think that AI is helpful or harmful to comic book creation?
I think any help that it could be is too eclipsed by the harm that it does to artists in general right now. I think that when you have a program that only exists because it essentially mines the internet for all this other art that people have created and amalgamates it into something else, it's unethical. And I think that as artists, we have our own tools to work with that, while they might not be perfect for our workflow, that still work well enough for now until we have a technology that doesn't rely on mining other artists. And so I think that it does too much harm for me to work well enough with the good, if that makes sense.
So we've been talking about Initium, and you've got another project in the works. So with that in mind, do you have a website that you recommend people go to find out more about your current and future projects?
Currently, I'm in the redevelopment stage of my website. So I have a website where people can find my comics, but I don't have a very specific website where they can read them right now.
Okay. How about social media? Any links there?
Yes. So people can find me on Instagram at Bois de Soul Arts, BOISDESAULE_arts. And that's where I'm at on Instagram. And they can also find me at Willow Arts on Facebook.
Great. Well, Ashley, those are all the questions I have for you, but I'm wondering, is there something I didn't ask that you'd like to get across in this interview?
What I would like to say is that, like, I think that any artist can create comics. I think sometimes people feel like their idea isn't necessarily good enough, or, you know, they might not have the following for it. But if you have an idea and you have a story and you want to tell it, then share it with the world, even if it's only your closest friends.
Thanks to Ashley for the chat. You can discover more about Ashley on Instagram at Beaudesolé Arts, and that's BOISDESAULE_arts. Thanks to you for listening to the True North Country Comics podcast. And if you haven't done so already, please subscribe to and like this podcast on Apple Podcasts. And please check out the TrueNorthCountryComics.com website. True North Country Comics is now on YouTube. Please like and subscribe to that video channel and hit the notification button. You can follow along at True North Country Comics on most social media sites. And please send your feedback to John at TrueNorthCountryComics.com. If you want to help the site and the podcast, please consider supporting the effort by chipping in at ko-fi.com/True North Country Comics. Your patronage is greatly appreciated. Thanks for listening, and come back soon for another episode. Bye for now. True North Country Comics Podcast is copyright True North Country Comics, copyright 2023.